Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today, I want to take you on a journey into music history, a story that has been buried for too long, a story about a woman who didn't just influence rock and roll, but built its very foundation. Her name? Sister Rosetta Tharpe. When we talk about the pioneers of rock and roll, the names that usually come up are Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, Little Richard, or Johnny Cash. But what if I told you, before all of them, there was a black woman with a guitar in her hands, electrifying audiences with a sound that would later be called rock and roll? Let's rewind to the early 1900s. Rosetta Newman was born in 1915 in Cotton Plant, Arkansas. From the very beginning, music ran through her veins. By the age of 6, she was already performing in churches, introduced as a singing and guitar-playing miracle. Raised on gospel, her roots were spiritual, but her style was something no one had heard before. When Rosetta picked up a guitar, she didn't just strum chords. She attacked it with power, speed, and emotion. She used distortion and a fast, intricate finger-picking technique that created a sound raw and untamed. She wasn't simply performing gospel music. She was rewriting its future. By the late 1930s, Rosetta signed with Decca Records. In 1938, she released songs like Rock Me and This Train. These weren't just gospel tunes. They were fiery, energetic, and carried the DNA of what would later become rock and roll. Rock Me, in particular, is astonishing. Spiritual lyrics fused with a rhythm and energy that sounded exactly like the rock classics we ID here years later. Remember? This was 1938. Elvis Presley was just 3 years old. The term rock and roll didn't even exist yet. But Sister Rosetta was already doing it. Her performances were electrifying. She'd stand on stage with her Gibson guitar and command the crowd with her energy, her voice, and her sheer presence. In a world where lead guitarists were almost always men and never black women, Rosetta stood tall, breaking every rule society had written for her. And she didn't just inspire audiences, she inspired legends. Chuck Berry openly admitted that his entire guitar style was based on hers. Little Richard said he wanted to play just like her. Johnny Cash called her one of his childhood heroes. Even Elvis Presley borrowed heavily from her fusion of gospel, blues, and country. Think about that. The very artists we celebrate as the kings and fathers of rock and roll were standing on the shoulders of its godmother. One of her most iconic performances happened in 1964 during a televised concert in Manchester, England. It was raining, the stage was set up in an old train station, and the scene looked almost surreal. But when Rosetta stepped out of a horse-drawn carriage, wearing a long coat, guitar in hand, and began singing "Didn't It Rain?", the audience was mesmerized. That performance didn't just entertain. It ignited inspiration in a generation of British musicians. Legends like Eric Clapton, Keith Richards, and Jeff Beck watched that broadcast. It showed them what rock could be. And yet, despite all this, her name faded into the shadows. Why? The answer is painful. Because she was a black woman in a deeply segregated America. Because she was a gospel singer who dared to mix sacred music with the blues. Because she was queer, living openly with her partner, Marie Knight, in a time when society wasn't ready to accept it. Rosetta broke barriers, but those same barriers kept the world from giving her the recognition she deserved. As the 1950s came, white artists like Elvis began popularizing the sound she had pioneered. The music industry, hungry for marketable stars, pushed black women like Rosetta out of the spotlight. Her career continued in Europe, where she was celebrated, but in the United States, she was slowly forgotten. She passed away in 1973. Heartbreakingly, she was buried in an unmarked grave in Philadelphia. For decades, the woman who helped create rock and roll didn't even have her name on her resting place. It wasn't until 2008 that fans and admirers came together to place a proper headstone there. But history has a way of correcting itself. In 2018, Sister Rosetta Tharpe was finally inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in the Early Influence category. And while that recognition was long overdue, even calling her just an influence feels incomplete. She wasn't just a side note. She wasn't just someone who came before. She was rock and roll, before it had a name. Today, music historians, artists, and fans are reclaiming her story. They're giving credit where it has always belonged. So the next time you hear a ripping guitar solo, the next time you hear a gospel-tinged rock anthem, remember the woman who played it first. Remember Sister Rosetta Tharpe, the godmother of rock and roll, the woman who redefined music and whose voice and guitar still echo through every note of the genre she helped create. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this story as powerful as I did, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video so more people can know the name Sister Rosetta Tharpe. Drop a comment below and tell us, which other forgotten pioneers of music history should we cover next? Because stories like this remind us, history isn't just about who got the credit, it's about who truly shaped the world.